Good morning, philosophers. I hope you have been well. Today is going to be like a super windy day here. It's like 30 mile per hour wind. Let's get started. So we're back to Socrates talking to the 500 people. And I was thinking about this yesterday. How 500 randomly selected Athenians, mostly probably nobodies, people that aren't important, people that are judging based on their feels and what they've been told and the gossip around Socrates. 500 zeros sat in judgment of one of the biggest ones that ever existed. And there's so many parallels from that to modern life. The people without the expertise, that have never created anything, that are not productive, somehow find themselves in positions of life and death power over the people that do. That's another theme from Atlas Shrugged, right? Okay. I shall call upon the god at Delphi as witness to the existence and nature of my wisdom, if it be such. Sorry, I have a sore throat today. I'm trying to have that farmer's mindset, where you can't really take sick days. You just have to push through. The crops will go bad whether or not you're sick if you don't harvest them. So we're going to press through. Karaphon, he was my friend from youth, and the friend of most of you, as he shared your exile and your return. You surely know the kind of man he was, how impulsive in any course of action. He went to Delphi at one time and ventured to ask the oracle, "As I say, gentlemen, do not create a disturbance." He asked if any man was wiser than I, and the Pythian replied that no one was wiser. Karaphon is dead, but his brother will testify to you about this. Consider that I tell you this because I would inform you about the origin of the slander. When I heard of this reply, I asked myself, whatever does God mean? What is his riddle? I am very conscious that I am not wise at all. What then does he mean by saying that I am the wisest? For surely he does not lie. It is not legitimate for him to do so. For a long time I was at a loss as to his meaning. Then I very reluctantly turned to some such investigation as this. I went to one of those reputed wise I went to one of those reputed wise, thinking that there, if anywhere, I could refute the oracle and say to it, "This man is wiser than I, but you said I was." Then I examined this man. There is no need for me to tell you his name. He was one of our public men. My experience was something like this. I thought that he appeared wise to many people, and especially to himself, but he was not. I then tried to show him that he thought himself wise, but that he was not. As a result, he came to dislike me, and so did many of the bystanders. So I withdrew and thought to myself, I am wiser than this man. It is likely that neither of us knows anything worthwhile, but he thinks he knows something when he does not, whereas when I do not know, neither do I think I know. So I am likely to be wiser than he to this small extent, that I do not think I know what I do not know. After this I approached another man, one of those thought to be wiser than he, and I thought the same thing, and so I came to be disliked both by him and by many others. Excuse me. That's an interesting point. And I think I agree with that. You are wiser when you embrace ignorance or admit ignorance. Know what you don't know instead of trying to pretend. That actually ranks you up on the wiseness ladder. After that, I proceeded systematically. I realized, to my sorrow and alarm, that I was getting unpopular, but I thought that I must attach the greatest importance importance to the god's oracle, so I must go to all those who had any reputation for knowledge to examine its meaning. And by the dog, men of Athens, for I must tell you the truth, I experienced something like this. In my investigation in the service of the god, I found that those who had the highest reputation were nearly the most deficient. Man, I'm going to come back and take notes on this page. In my investigation in the service of the god, I found that those who had the highest reputation were nearly the most deficient, while those who were thought to be inferior were more knowledgeable. I must give you an account of my journeyings as if they were labors I had undertaken to prove the oracle irrefutable. After the politicians, I went to the poets, the writers of tragedies and dithyrambs, and the others, intending in their case to catch myself being more ignorant than they. Oh man, always attempt to catch myself being more ignorant than other people. So I took up those poems with which they seemed to have taken most trouble and asked them what they meant, in order that I might at the same time learn something from them. I am ashamed to tell you the truth, gentlemen, but I must. Almost all the bystanders might have explained the poems better than their authors could. I soon realized that poets do not compose their poems with knowledge, but by some inborn talent and by inspiration, like seers and prophets who also say many fine things without any understanding of what they say. The poets seem to me to have had a similar experience. At the same time, I saw that, because of their poetry, they thought themselves very wise men in other respects, which they were not. So there again I withdrew, thinking that I had the same advantage over them as I had over the politicians. Finally, I went to Finally, I went to the craftsmen, for I was conscious of knowing practically nothing, and I knew that I would find that they had knowledge of many fine things. In this I was not mistaken. They knew things I did not know, and to that extent they were wiser than I. But men of Athens, the good craftsmen, seemed to me to have the same fault as the poets. Each of them, because of his success at his craft, thought himself very wise in other most important pursuits, and this error of theirs overshadowed the wisdom that they had, so that I asked myself, on behalf of the oracle, whether I should prefer to be as I am, with neither their wisdom nor their ignorance, or to have both. The answer I gave myself and the oracle was that it was to my advantage to be as I am. Try not to sniffle on the microphone. As a result of this investigation, men of Athens, I acquired much unpopularity, of a kind that is hard to deal with and is a heavy burden. Many slanders came from these people and a reputation for wisdom, for in each case the bystanders thought that I had myself possessed the wisdom that I proved that my interlocutor did not have. What is probable, gentlemen, is that in fact the god is wise, and that his oracle response meant that human wisdom is worth little or nothing, and that when he says, "This man Socrates," he is using my name as an example, as if he said, "This man among you mortals is wisest, though, like Socrates, understands that his wisdom is worthless." So even now I continue this investigation as the god bade me, and I go around seeking out anyone, citizen or stranger, whom I think wise. Then if I do not think he is, I come to the assistance of the god and show him that he is not wise. Because of this occupation, I do not have the leisure to engage in public affairs to any extent, nor indeed to look after my own, but I live in great poverty because of my service to the god. Furthermore, the young men who follow me around, of their own free will, those who have most leisure, the sons of the very rich, take pleasure in hearing people questioned. They themselves often imitate me and try to question others. I think they find an abundance of men who believe they have some knowledge but know little or nothing. The result is that those whom they question are angry not with themselves, but with me. They say, that man Socrates is a pestilential fellow who corrupts the young. If one asks them what he does and what he teaches to corrupt them, they are silent, and they do not know. But, so as not to appear at a loss, they mention those accusations that are available against all philosophers, about things in the sky and things below the earth, about not believing in the gods, and making the worse the stronger argument. They would not want to tell the truth, I'm sure, that they have proved to lay claim to knowledge when they know nothing. These people are ambitious, violent, and numerous. They are continually and convincingly talking about me. They have been filling your ears for a long time with vehement slanders against me. From them Meletus attacked me, and Anytus, from Anytus and Lycon. Meletus being vexed on behalf of the poets, Anytus on behalf of the craftsmen and the politicians, Lycon on behalf of the orators, so that, as I started out by saying, I should be surprised if I could rid you of so much slander in so short a time. That, men of Athens, is the truth for you. I have hidden or disguised nothing. I know well enough that this very conduct makes me unpopular, and this is proof that what I say is true. That such is the slander against me, and that such are its causes. If you look into this either now or later, this is what you will find. Let this suffice as a defense against the charges of my earlier accusers. After this, I shall try to defend myself against Meletus. After this, I shall try to defend myself against Meletus, that good and patriotic man as he says he is, and my later accusers. As these are a different lot of accusers, let us again take up their sworn deposition. It goes something like this. Socrates is guilty of corrupting the young and of not believing in the gods in whom the city believes. But in other new spiritual things, such is their charge. Let us examine it point by point. He says that I am guilty of corrupting the young, but I say that Meletus is guilty of dealing frivolously with serious matters, of irresponsibly bringing people into court, and of professing to be seriously concerned with things about none of which he has ever cared. And I shall try to prove that this is so. Come here and tell me, Meletus, surely you consider it of the greatest importance that our young men be as good as possible. Indeed, I do. Come then, tell these men who improves them. You obviously know in view of your concern. You say you have discovered the one who corrupts them, namely me, and you bring me here and accuse me to these men. Come, inform them and tell them who it is. You see, Meletus, that you are silent and know not what to say. Does this not seem shameful to you and a sufficient proof of what I say, that you have not been concerned with any of this? Tell me, my good sir, who improves our young men? The laws. That is not what I am asking. But what person who has knowledge of the laws to begin with? These jurymen, Socrates. How do you mean, Meletus? I think Meletus answered, and it didn't say who was speaking at the time. So Socrates, I think, says, tell me, my good sir, who improves our young men? And I think Meletus started talking. He said, the laws. And then Socrates, let's see. Socrates, that is not what I'm asking, but what person who has knowledge of the laws to begin with? And then Meletus says, these jurymen, Socrates. How do you mean, Meletus? Are these able to educate the young and improve them? Certainly. All of them, or some but not others? All of them. Very good by Hera. You mention a great abundance of benefactors, but what about the audience? Do they improve the young or not? They do too. What about the members of council? The counselor, excuse me, Meletus says the counselors also. But Meletus, what about the assembly? Do members of the assembly corrupt the young, or do they all improve them? They improve them. All the Athenians, it seems, make the young into fine good men. except me, and I alone corrupt them. Is that what you mean? That is most definitely what I mean. You condemn me to a great misfortune. Tell me, does this also apply to horses, do you think? That all men improve them and one individual corrupts them? Or is quite the contrary true? One individual is able to improve them, or very few, namely the horse breeders, whereas the majority, if they have horses and use them, corrupt them? Is that not the case, Meletus, both with horses and all other animals? Of course it is, whether you and Anytus say so or not. It would be a happy state of affairs if only one person corrupted our youth while the others improved them. You have made it sufficiently obvious, Meletus, that you have never had any concern for our youth. You show your indifference clearly, that you have given no thought to the subjects about which you bring me to trial. And by Zeus, Meletus, tell us also whether it is better for a man to live among good or wicked fellow citizens. Answer, my good man, for I am not asking a difficult question. Do not the wicked do some harm to those who are ever closest to them, whereas good people benefit them? Certainly, said Meletus. And does the man exist who would rather be harmed than benefited by his associates? Answer, my good sir, for the law orders you to answer. Is there any man who wants to be harmed? Of course not. All right, we will leave it there. He's getting some grilling in on Meletus. This is good. And I am definitely going to spend time later today going back a couple pages where admitting ignorance is a wise thing to do. There was some great stuff in there that bears spending a little bit of time meditating or thinking about. A little think time on those things. That's good. My intention for today. Yes. Yesterday was one of my toughest days in a long time. I dealt with something that I had procrastinated on for forever. Yesterday, sort of the theme was zero procrastination. I was successful. I made it the whole day. No procrastination. I did a lot of hard things. I basically worked for like 13 hours straight yesterday, just one thing after another, until I figured that I had done enough for the day and it would no longer be considered procrastination if I stopped working for the day. So I think I did really well. I'm proud of myself. And today I kind of want to reward myself for that. And today I'm going to order my to-do list in order of the things that are most fun to me, just as kind of a reward for yesterday. Also, I'm going to be reminding myself of the adage from the Stoics, do less better. What that means is say no more often. Take on less tasks, focus on the things that are actually important and consequential and profitable. And when you're doing less, you're able to focus better on those things and do better at them. So do less better. The other thing is I'm reminded of something along the same lines from the Render Unto Caesar book that I read last week by Vin Armani that kind of is along the same lines. I'll read to you. This is a quote from the book about profit and profit being a fundamental part of surviving. So I'm going to start with a little 4-line poem. All the way back to the beginning of time, every single one of your ancestors survived. So that's interesting to think about, that you are the result of a long line of people that made decisions that allowed you to exist. And part of the decisions that they made were to engage in, at least engage in more than they engaged in other things, in activities that resulted in profit. Profit is when you make more, or you are taking actions that result in you gaining more resources than what you expended in the process. And the quote from the book is this. And before I start the quote, that goes for all organisms. If an organism is unable to profit from its actions, then it dies. and it would not exist today. And this goes for everything hunting. Like if the lion spent more energy than he got from eating the gazelle, he would die. So it's only because he can invest a smaller amount of resources and gain a, quote, profit of calories that he's able to survive. So with that in mind, here's the quote. Because the fundamental notion of profit is a reflection of iron laws present in nature and in our own organism, an ideology that is anti-profit can accurately be called unnatural. That such ideologies have become prevalent is a signal that both as a culture and as individuals we have become disconnected from the natural world and the mechanics thereof. An ideology that has embedded within it the notion that the pursuit of profit is somehow immoral or evil is an ideology that, by definition, promotes death and destruction, since profit is a prerequisite for growth and life. So today, while I'm doing less better, I'm also going to be making, as part of the do less part, I'm going to be examining my list of things that I'm working on and concerned about, and making sure that they're all worth it, that I'm profiting from them and not just spinning my wheels on things that are not important. I'm going to honor my ancestors that all made decisions that resulted in my existence. All right, guys, this one was a little long today. I don't care, because I would have done this anyway. Have a great day, guys.